Hello, hello. We'll get rolling here in a minute, guys. Just give a little bit more time for a few more people to jump in. We'll get rocking and rolling. All right, we'll get going 1 minute here. I think we're ready to rock. Okay, welcome everyone. Glad that you could spend some time with me this afternoon in discussing a near and dear topic to my heart, and that's the topic of cash flow, and being able to predict revenues and profits. So before I get jump into this, just wondering out of curiosity, how many of you guys are general contractors on here? Maybe give me a one in the chat, just so I know what I'm dealing with. How many are general contractors or builders? If you can give me a one in the chat. Perfect. Dave, see ya there. Bella. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, great. Great. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the cash flow monster in the room. First of all, it starts off with a few cash flow myths. All right. If I'm busy, the cash will follow. All right. So one of the biggest myths I hear quite often is busy being the answer to cash flow or profit problems in general. And that's just not the case. Being busy without payment schedule, unpaid bills, stress crews, and a bank account that never catches up. All right. On the other hand, if we have cash flow is an invoice timing problem. All right. We want to think about deposits before material, progress payments, mid-job, final, and completion. And cash flow is predictable every time. All right. So we're going to be talking a lot today about even using JobTread. I know most of you guys are JobTread users, which is great. All right. But I want to really kind of make sure that I'm emphasizing this is actually when we are running into cash flow issues, it's typically a sign of sales to production handoff. All right. Most of it can be resolved in our pre-production. All right. Before a job starts, what I found is about 90% of the problems that occur, including cash flow problems, are a direct result of a poor sales to production workflow. So let's think about the real cost here today of poor invoice scheduling. And one more time, if I could just ask the question, how many of you guys are using payment schedules in your contracts? Give me a one in the chat. How many of you guys are actually using it? Perfect. Okay, right on. Waffles, yes. Okay, cool. All right. So, um, and it's going to be very important, and I hopefully you're on on the call today, but I want to talk to you and show you guys, in fact, and how to incorporate that into our actual schedules, where if we're doing a pre-production or a production schedule, sharing it with our customers, how we can have that show up. So the real cost of invoice scheduling: job starts, and the work begins. Materials are due, suppliers bills, payrolls due, crews get paid, right? work's done, job completed, but still waiting on payment. All right. I can say, without a doubt, we've had a lot of customers that have done everything right, all right, except for master this particular problem that we see quite a bit. So 43% of contractors say delayed payments are their number one headache. All right, 43%. This gets only worse as we get into commercial, all right, where we have different stipulations or different terms on our payments. It becomes even more important to be able to prove your um, will become even more important as you have to prove your percentage of completion. Okay. So we really want to think about the issue as being more of a scheduling and a operation that should be automatic within your business. And if you are using JobTread, I'm going to help you to try and work on some of those solutions that are upfront. Is anybody using a schedule in their actual document on each one, or are they making up a payment schedule for each contract? Okay. All right. So what is a cash flow calendar? Cash flow calendar is pretty simple. All right, it's basically your phases or your percentage of completion. All right, and it goes. And again, I'm going to say it for simple terms here. Phase one's our deposit. Before we start. Phase two is maybe after our framing, or if you can upfront the the payment. I like to use a 60 or a 20 40 sorry, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
it, oh, okay, all right.
All
Sorry, I
good.
thought my sound was cutting out. So we like to use it sometimes a 60/30/10 or a 60/40 um method. All right, so again, thinking about what your payment terms will be really depends on your particular business, but most people can do a lot better by their customer by getting more of the larger payments out in the beginning of the project. And I'm going to explain to you exactly why that's important and what it's actually doing for you. All right. So by leaving, getting most of the payments off the table earlier on, all right, and using smaller payments later on, all right, actually leads to a more satisfied customer. And we sort of proved this over and over again. And also reduces the amount of problems with holdbacks and things along those lines. So whenever possible, we want to get as much collected up front. All right. And once you understand kind of the client journey, all right, this makes a lot of sense. So anybody that thinks that, by leaving a large amount, even 20% towards the end, you can run into some problems, especially with certain size contracts. We want to leave the least amount towards the end of the contract, work on smaller payments if you can. All right. But really aligning this with the customer journey as well. Okay. So why does JobTread make this so easy? All right. Well, first thing is you can automate your invoicing. All right, which I love. As soon as a contract gets signed, if you have a payment schedule built into it, all right, it is automatically sending your deposit invoice. All right, and it's allowing the customer to receive that invoice immediately. Now, one of the features that I think is largely unused by most contractors is actually building the payment schedule, all right, into your actual schedule that you're sharing with your customer. All right. And that would be based on your milestones. So the second you touch that schedule or mark that milestone complete, it will automatically send your invoices. All right. So I have a gift for everybody that's here today. I'm going to put it right in the chat right now so I don't forget. I've created some SOPs just to make it a little bit easier on how to do these exact things that I'm talking about, so I don't spend all of our time going through a step by step. All right. But I'm going to share these in the chat. Um, Anybody who would like to grab those. All right. They're the step by step on how to add a payment schedule and how to add a payment schedule that connects to your actual schedule. All right. Now, the other features that I don't think get used often enough, that should be, all right, is the automated payment reminders. Okay. And again, these work even better if you actually have, a CRM above JobTread. We use Go High Level for most of our clients. Works very, very well for following up on these particular things. All right. But again, when a customer misses a payment schedule, all right, how are we handling that? How are we reminding them? How long is it actually going for? Are you having disputes when it comes to payment time? All right. A lot of times these things can be solved, all right, in that, before the job even gets going. So we're a big fan here in our pre-production. We have a pre-conference job meeting, all right, where we actually present them, your chart, your Gantt chart, if you're using it, of the scheduled dates. And on there is going to be included when their payments are due. All right. Now, in my business, we've been getting rather lucky with this particular process where a customer actually just writes us pre predated checks for completion. Okay. Now I'm curious, how many of you guys are getting paid like that up front? Anybody here using that? No, not yet. Okay, well, hopefully we can help you to sort that out a little bit today. And really, if you think about it, all right, most customers are stressed by payment. Okay. They're, again, depending on your customer, if you're dealing with a B2C customer, all right, and you make it really, really clear when their payments are due on their projects, all right, it makes it a lot easier for them. Okay. Moving money around, stuff like that. A lot of times, if we were leaving it without this schedule or without communicating it, it is going to come across a lot more awkwardly. All right. And it's not going to feel like it's being well systemized within your process and within your client journey. All right. So really, really important. The other big benefit with JobTread, which I love, is we have dashboards. Okay. So not allowing jobs to proceed that have missed payments is very important, but a lot of times we just don't have enough of that visible. And we're going to go through a few or one dashboard today that I find particularly helpful. And not me being on top of it, but having somebody that is on top of it, making sure that, payments are received on time.
Es das que hacen entrar,
Oh, hold on a
que
second, guys. Sorry. Me too. Okay. So when we're breaking it down by projects, when we're breaking our projects down into phases, all right. So again, we want to try and think about these phases, and I'm going to be sharing with you kind of a typical client journey, especially for remodelers and for builders and general contractors. All right. Again, still can apply for smaller projects, but we want to really think about timing it around how they're going to be feeling and where they are emotionally when their project is actually being completed. So we start with our deposit, before any work begins, if you can upfront it. I know certain states have different, rules on this. We always try to collect about a 25% deposit if we can. All right. Sometimes that's not the case. But you know, when we get into projects, and then when we're getting onto when we start a job is when we're going to take our largest payment. All right. So again, maybe you're using a 2040 system, right? We're going to have 60% collected before we even start the work or as we show up to do the work. All right. And then, a 30%. So there's only 10% left at the end of the draw. Now, for remodelers, again, you can time this around, certain key things being completed. Maybe your demo or your cabinets, final walkthrough. The other thing with JobTread that I encourage everyone to consider, all right, is if you're using subcontractors, all right, you can give them a payment. You can put them on a payment schedule as well. So letting them know when their payments will be and putting that in their work orders. All right, very, very smart for keeping your sub trades happy, number one, and tying it to actual milestones that get completed. All right. So once you've collected, they know when they're going to be paid. And it's, becomes very systematic for you if you're managing a lot of subs at one time. All right. So again, hopefully most of you guys here have figured out how to use the scheduler inside of JobTread. If you haven't, again, take a look at the SOPs I've shared, so we don't get too deep into that. I will spend some time at the end of the call as well to go through the technical things for anybody that's struggling with that. And we'll do some examples and how we can make this work. All right. So we want to set up our deposits that cover all of your materials at a minimum. All right. Or again, if you have rules in your state or in your area about deposits, I know, California, I think you're only allowed to collect 10%. All right. We want to time this with a draw as soon as that material drops. Again, you're collecting a large payment that more than covers the material costs or any of your labor, initially, and getting yourself at least a 2-week window ahead on cash. Right. So you should be in a cash flow positive position. All right. So, out of curiosity, how many of you guys are buying materials before the work starts? Anybody here doing that or getting caught in that trap? Milestones are a start, not a finish. Yeah, often. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So again, a lot of times we end up accepting terms that aren't necessarily a reflection of what the customer is thinking, or that they've agreed to. All right. Many times we can negotiate as well. For you guys that are doing commercial work, for you guys that are in terms, it may be AIA type contracts. Most guys don't realize that they can negotiate their terms. All right. You can negotiate for a higher, initial payment. You can negotiate as well. One of the methods that we try to teach most of our clients is in a commercial setting or a B2B setting by giving an incentive for your customer to pay sooner. So when we're doing commercial work, we always give a 2% if they pay within 10 days. All right. We also, negotiate all of our payment terms, and you'd be very surprised how flexible they can become, especially in the early stages of the project where, the highest morale is. All right. So again, we want to make sure that our costs are being covered up front. We want to actually negotiate these terms and make sure that they're in our best interest, our best favor when possible. All right. And we also want to think of incentives and things that we can add, all right, that make it incentivized to pay sooner if, again, you're on terms or if you have, longer wait periods for collection. All right. So our step 3 is we're going to actually schedule our progress payments. All right. So again, we can do this directly inside of JobTread, which I encourage everybody here to do. All right. If you haven't done it, grab those SOPs I've shared in the chat. All right. And, walk yourself through with the step-by-step, and you'll be able to see just how easy this is. Okay. For anybody else here that wants to set it up permanently as well, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you go into your documents, into your templates, you can actually add a permanent payment schedule there. All right. So that whenever you send out a proposal, it's already built into it. Okay. So again, setting up this as a template, if you have more variables in your contracts, you may have to set up different progress payments in each contract, more on a job by job base. But for the most part, we can standardize this so it makes it really, really easy. And again, you're setting yourself up for success with it. How are variable costs such as change orders and allowances handled? That's a great question. So your change orders, in my humble opinion, first of all, the way we want to treat them is we're actually going to treat them, with immediate collection. All right. So if somebody wants a change order, all right, it's possible to bill that out 100%. All right. And think about the situation with change orders. All right. Are they convenient for you to run? In most cases, is it convenient to have a change work order for you? Most of the time, no. All right. All right. So I have a two-prong approach with this and with most of our clients. One is I'm a big fan of explaining your change work order process up front. All right. And having an addendum to work. All right. So this is essentially a document that you share in your pre-construction meeting. All right. Where you explain how change work orders are going to be treated. If you use an addendum to work, this is essentially them signing a blank check where you notify them of a change. They authorize that change. All right. And any bills or expenses associated to that get billed, immediately for it. Right. So if it's labor, if it's materials, okay, but you have a pre-authorization for, any change work orders under $5,000 or $10,000, whatever you make that for your business. Now, a lot of guys haven't used this before, but it does two really, really important things. Number one, is it makes it clearly defined in the beginning how a change work order is going to be handled. All right. You get authorization to proceed with that, provided that, once you've explained what the change is, and this is really good for smaller changes, all right, ones that typically get missed, all right, that you're going to inform the customer, hey, we found damage behind the wall, you know, but we're going to proceed with it, because the worst thing that can happen is you have to stop work while you're putting together a change work order. And then in a lump sum situation, again, how do you know you're covering all your expenses? All right. So I much rather have that addendum to work that's already been clearly explained. All right. It covers your overhead, your profit. All right. And now we're just, managing the material and labor, and it's going to speed up, these change work orders a lot sooner. Your customer is going to appreciate it. And ultimately, again, it's going to maintain your profit margins through it. Now, with that said, and I'll just go one step further, there are situations, again, if it's a larger change work order, I'm going to say anything 10K plus, all right, you would have to go to maybe a formal proposal option as well. Okay. So number four is we can automate the reminders in JobTread. Okay, so again, sometimes it's just a matter of reminding them or letting them know in advance when a payment's going to be due. All right, so I always encourage this. You can set these automations up within JobTread. So letting your customer know 5 days before you're scheduled to have that completion milestone that payment's due will often get you paid much sooner. Okay, it's a simple little reminder to let the customer know. All right, can be on an automated message, and they do genuinely appreciate that. Okay, rather than letting them forget about it. All right, and then they still take the same 5 days, 6 days to come up with the payment, transfer money or whatever they need to do. All right. The other thing it does is remove some of the awkward calls. All right, so when clients get an automated message, again, we all know what an automated message is. All right, this is better than an awkward call, having to discuss it with them. All right. Ultimately leading to faster payments, which is very, very important. Automated reminders cut late payments by 40%. Okay. So imagine solving some of your problems just with an automated reminder. Again, very, very effective if you're doing commercial or term work as well. Okay, so making sure that you're staying on top of your receivables, making sure that you reminded their accounts payable department. All right, super, super helpful for making sure that there's no issues. The other thing, guys, too, if you're doing commercial, really, really important, all right, is that you are understanding how their billing terms are, all right, and you're confirming that they've received all their documents. So within JobTread as well, you can see when the documents have been opened. All right, we've had a number of times where we go to collect from a B2B party, and they said, "Oh, I didn't get the invoice." And we have to politely respond, well, it's kind of funny because you opened it on this and this date. All right. Eliminates that excuse. All right. Gets you paid a lot sooner. All right. That with your reminders, sometimes a phone call just to make sure they've received it, especially if you're dealing with a newer customer, B2B, maybe, just making sure that they've got everything. All right. After that, generally sets things pretty straight. All right. And then built-in tracking. So every sent reminder is logged automatically. So we can do a full audit. Again, like I was just sharing, when there is a dispute over when payments were received. Okay. Step 5, we can use dashboards to actually track, who owes us money and where our money is. All right. So again, if you're, especially, if you have longer terms, all right, we want to keep those receivables as low as possible and have a plan when receivables go over a certain stage. All right. So again, you can automate some of this, but you still need to, be on top of your receivables, and having this, and clear your site. Very, very important. Okay, so we want to spot the gaps early. Anna's painting saw a 14K gap coming 2 weeks out, renegotiated a payment date, and avoided overdraft. Okay, so when you can visibly see, all right, where your cash is going to be and where your collections will be, all right, it helps to be less reactive and more proactive in taking action if you are going to be short in your cash flow. Okay. I'm going to stop for a second. If anybody has any questions, I know we're kind of blasting through some stuff here. Feel free to unmute yourself or throw a question in the chat. I'm here for you. I want to answer any questions you have. All right. Don't be shy if you want to unmute. Just let me know, or I'll continue on my way here.
Hey Jay,
Yeah.
um, have you ever had any problems with customers trying to get out of paying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Last week. What do you mean? Of course. So, and one of the things that I'm trying to show you here is like when you have a payment dispute, okay, and hopefully it doesn't become a legal dispute, all right. But we should always be treating everything as if it's going to go to a court case, all right. When you start to treat every job as if you're building a legal case, things really do change, right? So communication becomes a lot more important. Proving your due diligence, all right, is going to help you to frame that conversation. But give me an example of where you're struggling to get payments.
Well, I was wondering how you go about that, and I'm assuming this organizing really helps with the payments and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, we shared a story last week. I wouldn't have enough time to share the same one again, but um, with JobTread, especially, if you're using pre-production checklists and everything else, and you're doing everything exactly according to your contract, you can prove that. All right. So, depending on where you are, all right, when the payment dispute erupts, it all comes down to what you can prove, right? And if you've ever had the unfortunate matter of taking someone through court for non-payment, all right, it's a matter of being able to prove, that payments were sent promptly, that they violated your contract, all right, and that's going to allow a judge to give you a judgment much sooner in collections. On the other hand, I'd say 90% of my disputes get resolved merely with my contract, all right, the terms we have, the fact we follow a very specific process on every job. It's the same way every single time. We built that through JobTread, so that's through a matter of to-dos, daily job reports being updated, all right, so that any dispute that comes up gets settled, before it becomes a problem. And that's really the answer I'd like to put forth is if you're proactive, you shouldn't have too many.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Right. So again, as you go through this process in building out these schedules, one of the most important things that all contractors need to be aware of, in which JobTread is a phenomenal tool at doing. All right, and most contractors takes them a little while to figure this out, but there's two major factors that we want to be on top of. All right. The first major factor that we want to be on top of in your PM, or if you're the PM, you want to be, actively monitoring and have in your site, is your variance. So your variance on your budget. Okay. Knowing when a job is running over budget. All right. Knowing that information real time and versus having it be late. All right. It's going to help a lot in changing some of the outcomes. All right. JobTread does that really, really well. Okay. The second thing we want to be really in charge of is our schedule variance. Okay. So if you're having problems with cash flow, all right, I promise you most of the problems that you're going to find, all right, is pre-production, like I've been saying, not having an organized, approach to, getting your job ready to production, not having, a schedule for payment, all of those things built into it. All right. And then not being able to actually schedule a job realistically. All right. So most people don't believe me when I tell them, but if your pre-production is off in any sort of way, it literally cripples your actual schedule that you're gonna follow when production comes. Okay. And then when you do that, so when a job is, 15 days instead of, 5 days, what's that do to cash flow? What's that do to your business overall? Right. So we need to be tracking that, and JobTread allows you to do that in your schedule variance. Okay, and if you have a project manager working for you, all right, this is one of the most important KPIs that we follow. We want to hold them accountable to maintaining our budget, so they're a defense player, right? We're going to maintain our budget or try to beat that budget, all right, and we're also going to be very, very tough on them about schedule variance. Okay, because any changes in that schedule will change, our WIP report, again through JobTread. Okay, so want to share a really quick story with you. It's actually a good one that we just recently went through. We had a contractor we're working with was running 4 jobs simultaneously, big remodeling projects. All right, invoices only at the job completion, so a majority of his payments were towards the end. All right. Which was quite silly. He was, again, doing some larger projects, but would forget to invoice or, get tied up and send the invoices late. All right. Payroll was due and no cash to cover it. Had to take a line of credit to actually cover his payroll, which, again, right away kind of put up red flags. Is why are you financing someone else's job? All right. Couldn't quote new work confidently, and his stress levels were through the roof. Okay, so again, if you're both the salesman and the project manager and all the hats in one, okay, we've all been there. We know what that's like. This is where the stress levels get much, much higher, and our confidence starts to be shaken on the front end when we're missing the main hat we should be wearing, which is building the business. All right. So now the same thing, we set them up in JobTread. Same, 4 types of jobs, but payments are scheduled. Deposits were collected before materials were ordered. Progress invoices sent automatically. Payroll funded 2 weeks ahead of time. Zero borrowing in 8 months straight, and took on 2 new jobs with confidence. Okay. So it's amazing how just a small change, all right, would equate to such a better outcome. All right. And we see this pretty consistently, especially again, using the tools that are available to everybody. All right. So some of the common mistakes that we want to avoid. All right. Waiting till the job is done to invoice anything really. We want to have, if you can have it less than 5%. Okay. And I'm going to explain to you in the next thing why exactly that is. All right. If you have 20 or 30% left at the end of the job, you are going to leave with an unsatisfied customer. And I promise you that. I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually facts. Okay. So, again, a deposit that doesn't cover materials, you're essentially giving your client a 0% loan. Um, and allowing them to have leverage, which is, again, a very important thing to keep in mind. All right. We want to have the least amount of leverage in these projects, and money is often used as leverage by customers. All right. And when they do use leverage, it's usually a sign that they don't trust you, they don't trust your business, or they don't trust your process. Okay, so if you're finding that customers are leveraging or pushing back on deposits, pushing back on, payment schedules, all right, we have to really look at the system that we're using and why we're creating mistrust, why they would be concerned with paying you for their services. Okay. Again, no automated reminders, easy thing to solve. All right. Everybody should have them if we're giving out if we're running jobs. All right. Manual follow-ups fall through the cracks. Clients assume no news, no payment needed. Okay. So again, getting those reminders out before job like invoices are due, very, very helpful. All right. Forgetting progress payments. All right. I can't tell you how many times we've had these discussions. All right. When you're doing things manually, when you're wearing a lot of hats, when you're doing a lot of the stuff yourself. And we all know most contractors aren't the best at administration. All right. I'm pretty sure nobody here has ever woke up in the morning and said, "Oh boy, I've got a whole bunch of invoices to do and a bunch of bills to enter into QuickBooks." Anybody had that moment where they're just like really excited about that? I don't think so. Unless I have accounts receivable people on here, and then in which case that is a good day for them. All right. So not recording payments in JobTread. Again, when a check arrives, it isn't locked into your AR balance. And again, it's going to throw out all of your reports. All right, to leading to some double billings or missed follow-ups. All right. So make sure that we're adding in and recording our payments. All right. As soon as you get a check. All right. That's very, very important. Skipping the reference number when recording a payment, always capture the check and the number, the ID, the card information. Missing it creates some headaches, right? So make sure that we're capturing all of that. If you can take a picture of your checks as well. All right. Also, I'm going to add to this, making payments really easy. All right. Getting people to give you post-dated checks. All right. Another, again, if you've done everything right in your sales and your production, your customer, you will be able to tell if your customer really trusts you if they're willing to give you, post-dated checks based on your schedule. All right. And that again works out really, really well. We use it, and it's been no headaches as of yet. Okay, so I love quick wins. I want to share some quick wins with you guys, that we can all, actually take action on today, which is what we're here for. All right. So schedule all invoices in JobTread. All right. So using the payment schedule method, right? This is going to automatically create your invoices for you. Okay. If you want to take it one step further, all right. So meaning as soon as your job is one, all right. And you're going to set up your payment schedule that those invoices are just ready there for you to send. Okay. If you want to take it one step further and make life even more easier, all right, we're going to tie this to a schedule. Okay. So when you generate a schedule of your major milestones, you're going to attach the payment schedule to that milestone so that the second you click that milestone on the schedule as being complete, it's going to automatically send your invoice. Okay. A lot of people don't know about that feature. It makes things super easy. Okay. It's also something that you can communicate ahead of time and follow up on. All right. Pre adding the reminders and stuff to it. So turn on the automated reminders, go to the JobTread settings, enable the automated invoice reminders, set 3-day and 1-day reminders for all unpaid invoices. All right. And even invoices that are due. So I like to use the pre due notice. Okay. Record any pending payments. Open every job with received payments not yet logged. And let's get those logged in. All right. So that you can get the full picture of your receivables. Again, I know it's one of those things. It is an administrative thing, but it's a habit that we need to build. Um, and really, really important for seeing where you are with your receivables, setting up dashboards and everything else like that. Again, very helpful to have a flash report or a dashboard that's telling you who owes you money. All right, but that only works if you're actually putting in the proper data. Yeah, hold on one sec. I'll throw these. I'm going to throw these back in the chat for everybody. So there's some SOPs. Oh, I'm sharing two with you guys here. One's just a regular payment schedule that should go out with your contracts. All right. One's again, one step further to that is actually matching that to your schedule so that it shows up. Okay. Adding progress payments to the contract. If you haven't yet started, please do today. Okay. Anytime a contract goes out, all right, we're all collecting deposits. We can define those terms in JobTread, all right, adding them specifically. You can have it as a template that shows up every time, or you can do it on a job by job basis. The reality of it is it doesn't take very long to set up either way, all right, and it saves a lot of time, all right, a lot of aggravation. So let's make sure we get those progress payments into JobTread, and then check your daily or your dashboard weekly. All right. So have a time. All right. Most of us have calendars, hopefully. All right. Set a reminder for yourself, to check these things. All right. Or have it on a Teams, checklist, or put it in, JobTread's reoccurring tasks. All right. If we want to get fancy with this should be an operation and SOP that's followed. If it's not by you, it's going to be by whoever is in that role in your business. All right. But super important. Okay. At a certain level in your business, these problems only get harder and harder. All right. If you don't learn to master them at a base level and have a very good system in place, they tend to continue to haunt you, throughout your projects. And there's nothing worse than, doing a great job and then fighting to get paid. All right. So, um, one more thing I wanted to kind of bring to everybody's attention here and understanding why, we should be, really thinking about where we're collecting money. All right. Is there's a natural, all right, up and down experience that every homeowner goes through. And I'm using a homeowner here as an example. All right. Where they're more willing and more able to, you know, reduce leverage. Okay. And I call that. So when we sign a contract, all right, as you can see here, that is an emotional low for a lot of people. Okay. By the time the work actually starts, all right, we get into footings, rough in framing. That is about the emotional high right to windows. All right. And the window that we have, all right, to get the most amount of collections done while there's still, natural goodwill. And I say it not that, again, that you're doing anything wrong to upset your customer. What you have to understand is every human being on planet Earth experiences change in a pretty similar way. All right. So when we're working at someone's home, especially building a house, all right, the change curve is pretty predictable. All right. Most of you guys can probably identify with some of this. All right. The hardest time to collect payment, the hardest, most difficult time is when your customer's emotional, um, you know, availability is low. And usually this is around drywall sanding and trim cabinets. All right. This is the worst time to be setting up your payment schedules, all right? And where the client will consider leverage, all right? We don't want to allow that leverage to take place. And again, what happens, all right? And again, I've seen it time and time again. The more money that's off the table by the time we get to the end of the job, all right? With they only owe you 5% by the closure, less punch list items, less complaining, less holdbacks, less, taking their time to make the payment. All right. You're going to find a customer that's just happy to pay and they're satisfied, believe it or not. All right. So again, getting the payments out of the way earlier in the process, all right, is actually in your best interest. It's in your favor. And your customer is going to appreciate, you're going to have a happier customer at the end. All right. So anybody that has that illusion that, by leaving more money on the table, that you're somehow keeping trust or keeping the customer happy, or if your customer is intentionally holding back, right, and not following your payment schedule or a part of your contract, all right, that's the point of which you need to stop working. All right. And everyone here should have a stop work clause in their contracts. Doesn't matter who you're dealing with, B2B, B2C, commercial, I don't care. All right. If you're signing someone else's contract, you make sure you scratch out anywhere where it forces you to continue working, even if payment has not been made. Okay. One of the things that you have to be very disciplined on is identifying when to stop. All right. And, again, when to understand when people are, applying leverage. All right. A lot of times I see contractors get themselves into trouble where a customer will demand, extra services, and withhold payment as a result of that. I don't know if anyone's had that experience, right? Or find, things that, weren't in the contract that all of a sudden they feel were, and they're withholding payment as leverage against those things. Sure, no one's had that experience here. Okay. So one of the things that I find most interesting, and this was in the Remodelers Mag a little while ago, about just in terms of what creates happy customers, what creates satisfied customers at the end. And again, communication is one of the most important things, especially in these projects. So how we communicate, and think about all the methods and ways that we can communicate nowadays, right? In JobTread, we can send direct messages, we can text. And it always kind of strikes me as odd is that we have multiple ways to communicate. We've got our phone, our text, we have all these methods, but still, you know, probably one of the highest customer complaints is communication. Why is that? And what are you doing to stop it? Do you think that that has a lot to do with why customers don't trust us? All right. Or you get into jobs where, a customer becomes overbearing or, creates leverage or becomes hostile. A lot of this is always traced back to how we communicated. All right. Are we leading our projects? Are you being a good leader, informing your customer before, or are we just kind of, going about every job, with poor communication and wondering why we're having problems? Okay. So I'd love to, here's our, a typical job schedule. So I whipped this up for you guys so you can understand and see. All right. This is actually tied to a payment. All right. So again, sharing this with your customer, even including them on the scheduler. all right, having them assigned to that task in terms of their payment obligation, all right, is going to send an automatic reminder as well. You can update them of when that payment is due, which is another clever way to kind of keep them informed. All right. So again, they know, hey, this is the payment. And if we're doing good pre-production, we're having our, pre-job conference. All right. You're going to point that out. You're going to circle it when that payment is due. All right. So there's no dispute, Saturday, March 14th, that's when I'm expecting that, I'm collecting a $5,200 payment. All right. Again, that gives them plenty of time to get that prepared. And it also allows you to ask again because you're structuring it, you're demonstrating your value, demonstrating, your ability to lead a project. You can ask for predated checks. Okay. So just had a customer tell me it's my job to get the money from the insurance that he gave my quote to them. Yeah, so I could have done that better, letting them know the contract is between him and us. Yes. The other side of this is contract clauses. So we could have a very deep conversation about this. I use my contract and our team uses our contract probably every other day. Okay. Most contractors don't review their contracts and don't have terms. All right. I see a lot of this going on is where they have, maybe somebody else's contract. All right. They've used a boiler or a template, super important that we're actually thinking of our contracts as tools. All right. As a way of de-escalating, situations. I can share with you, many hundreds of times where my contract is used, to de-escalate. All right, to explain to a customer. And again, I've got every one of my clauses I can tell you is directly related to a bad experience that I've had with a customer. Right, they're all war wounds. All right, so again, think about the situations that you're having on jobs, that lead to maybe non-payment or lead to a dissatisfied customer. We can oftentimes further trace those back to your contract, how it was explained. Okay. That communication you're having with your client. All right. So, perfect example of this. Why do let's say we have a contract term for a change work order process. Okay. We send that out. We think we're all good and covered. But if nobody really actually explained how the change work order process works, and then you just make a vague reference to something in your contract, your customer is not going to be too happy. What we want to do is get layers of understanding onto that. So again, why do I recommend we have a pre-conference before the job starts? We actually explain to them exactly how the change work order process is going to work, and we get them to sign off on that again for a second time. All right. It's in their contract. We actually went out of our way, and it's called due diligence. Okay. So a lot of times in court, hopefully none of you guys end up there. The whole idea of this is to keep you away from going to court. The only one that wins there is the lawyers. All right. But, when you can say to a customer, hey, you know, here's my contract term, all right, and how we're going to handle a change work order. Here's our pre-conference where you agreed to that term again, all right, and here's exactly how we handled it. Do we have a dispute anymore? Probably not. Okay. So this is what I mean about leveraging these things ahead of time. So let's take the payment schedule. All right. Again, you would have terms in your contract of when you can stop work, why you can stop work. All right. So if they've missed a payment draw, you have the right to stop work. That's going to be in your contract, but you're also going to have that be restated again in your pre-production conference call where you're doing a transfer of trust, especially if you're using a project manager. Okay. Because a lot of people don't read these contracts well and they don't understand legal language. All right. And that could be argued in court as well. So a lot of times the clauses in your contract can be turned over in court if they can say that it was too complicated or too vague. Okay. So it's up to you again to have another layer of protection for yourself where you're explaining to them you had a conversation and you've documented that. And that's understood. So there's no dispute when you get to do they owe you the money or not? Does this make sense? Okay. So I'd love to take in your questions, guys. Thanks for hanging in there with me on this. If anybody have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or to put your question in the chat here. I'm here for you. Anything to do with contracts, payment terms, cash flow. Love to help you with any of those issues. I see Scott, you got your hand raised.
Yes, hi. I actually sent you I don't want to take up too much time in here, so I
Sure.
sent you a private message about a situation I'm dealing with right now.
Okay. All right. No problem. I'll answer that privately then.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So anybody else have any questions in terms of how to set this up in JobTread? Anybody really lost?
Yeah, Jay. Just about how do I solidify a contract?
Okay. So talk to me about Solidify. What do you mean by that? Like how do you develop one or like what do you mean by that?
Make it more like oh, I don't know what words I'm looking for.
Okay, so make it easier to understand, make it more in your benefit.
Yeah, yes, very clear,
Okay.
for sure.
All right. So here's my 2 cents, okay? Um, and I'm going to say it to you from a contractor's perspective. Over the years, my contract has developed and I've consistently gone back to it in every bad situation we've had. Okay, so whenever we have a lesson to be learned, all right, a lot of times again, I have a clause in my contract, and I'll give you this example about radio frequencies. All right. And if they're discovered, how it's not our responsibility to remove them and that we can immediately stop work. Now, how the hell do you think I got that in there? Right? It was an actual experience we had where we didn't know cell phone towers emitted, these high frequencies that would actually cause damage to your skin and stuff. We had a project where that was the case, and we were locked into a commercial contract, and we didn't have that clause. All right. And the outcome of that is I spent $130,000 removing cell phone tower equipment so we could complete a job on a $110,000 job. All right. And it was because it was government and I locked into it, I lost. All right. A very, very painful lesson. Okay. Those are the kind of things that you want to think about when you're creating your contracts. Okay. So there are some that are going to be standard boilerplate ones, but think about the experiences that you've had. Right? Think about the lessons that you've had to learn. That's the first step. And then the second step to that is have your attorney, all right, have a good contract attorney review those clauses with you on a yearly basis. Okay. And then the third thing is get in the practice, all right, of using it as a tool. I can't stress this enough, and I can't, like, again, I could go on and on about this. We use our contract as, the single source, right? When we have a dispute with a customer and they've, clearly not read that contract, we remind them. All right. I mean, we do a lot of metal roofing where we have some oil canning. That's right there in our contract. We're not accountable for that. It's a natural thing. And you know how many kinds of I've said I'm not paying you because of oil canning. Well, you know what? I'm gonna have to insist that you do. All right. And here's the consequences if you don't. All right. Now, a lot of things become de-escalated, meaning they don't go further than that. And again, you don't actually even lose the customer, right? Your terms were clear. So again, I think a lot of us need to review our contracts very, very carefully. All right. And as you do business, all right, always be looking for, those clauses that you can add that protect you. All right. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? Okay. The other thing too is there are specifically contract lawyers that you can consult that would have a lot more ability to kind of give you these terms. Okay. Anybody else? Any
Oh,
questions?
yeah, I have one.
Sure.
I'm a small contractor here from Dallas. We've been a sub and a GC,
Okay.
and we deal a lot with not being able to find consistent work. And in the times that we've had, we usually run into GCs that are not the
Predatory?
nicest to get. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. That's a perfect word.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of trouble getting jobs in.
Okay. Totally understand that, and you're definitely not alone on that. So, I'm gonna say the majority, like, well, maybe not the majority. I shouldn't say it like that. There is definitely 20 to 30% of general contractors that, if given the opportunity, become predators. All right, and they look for subcontractors that are disorganized and that don't have visible systems. Okay, and the reason they're going to take advantage of you in that situation is that they assume that you're unsophisticated about running your business and that they can. Okay, so one of the ways to fully circumvent that, all right, is having them sign an upfront agreement about payment terms, like, getting those things out of the way. You may think that that's going to turn them off from business. Good contractors, all right, are actually attracted to that. All right, they'd actually prefer that. All right, when everything is crystal clear, all right, because you're reducing liability for them, all right, and you're reducing risk by being organized. All right, the subcontractors I get nervous about are the ones that don't have paperwork, that can't do their invoices on time, that demonstrate to me that they have poor business skills. I want to work less with them because they present a risk to me. Okay, so first thing I would address is looking at how you systemize, even what we're talking about today: on time invoices, having payment terms be clear and upfront. All right, not just starting work for somebody, out of the clear blue sky, and you'll find you retain your customers and they work with you more often. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. Any other questions, guys? Okay, great. Anybody that's still left on the call, if you wanted to book a call with us, happy to, go through your systems and help you review that, come up with a game plan. We're here to help. Anything JobTread related, of course, we are a full consultant, so we help build out the whole business even outside of JobTread. So anybody looking to, build their business from a systems point of view, I mean, that's what we focus in on, helping contractors avoid some of these painful lessons that don't have to be learned if you get the right systems in place. Okay, appreciate everybody's time today, and I hope you got some value. We'll